The new update not only brings the JS-17, but it also brings another top-tier Chinese fighter, the J-10. Now, to be honest, I didn't really know anything about the J-10 for, well, forever, and I still don't really know anything about the J-10, to be honest. But I do know that it can carry up to 6 PL-12 air-to-air missiles, as well as, in addition to that, it can also have 2 IR missiles, the PL-5E2, I believe, which is supposed to have IRCCM. At the time of recording, it does not have IRCCM on the dev server, but it should by the time it reaches live server, so stay tuned for that. And the other option it has is the Python 3, or they call it the PL-8. Right now, since the PL5 isn't anything different, anything new, I just use the Python 3 since it's a little bit better. But once the PL5E2 is finished, I will be using that missile and I'll let you guys know how it is. I do like the J-10 better than the JF-17. The JF-17 just pulls AOA out of its buns. That thing can pull without a doubt, but it also bleeds speed extremely fast because of how hard it can pull, and the rudder feels a little bit weird. Needless to say, the flight model on the JF-17 feels rather unfinished, and I do expect it to change, so I'm not really too worried about commenting on the flight model. And really the same goes for the J-10, but I do like the feeling of the J-10 a little bit better as of right now because it still does pull some pretty gnarly AOA. I mean, look at the design of the wing on this plane. It looks like a plane that's going to be pulling hard, and it does. But this plane doesn't pull quite as hard as the JF-17, but it actually has a working engine. And that's a little bit harsh. The JF-17's engine isn't terrible, but for the battle rating it's at and the kind of competition you have, I would like to see a good bit more thrust to weight on the JF-17, and this problem is mostly remedied with the J-10. This thing will actually Mach climb, it will get supersonic rather easily, it will continue accelerating at high altitude rather easily, and it gets its speed back quickly after a dogfight. So as I said, neither flight model feels particularly finished. I will say the J-10 does feel a little bit more finished than the JF-17. The JF-17 pulling harder between the two, it can pull more AOA, but at the cost of losing speed more, and it has less thrust to weight than the J-10, so it's not going to be getting that speed back nearly as quickly. The J-10 still pulls plenty of AOA, and it actually has some good thrust to weight for a top tier plane. The JS-17 is at 13.3 BR and is probably going to stay at 13.3 BR. That way you can't buy your way into the absolute top tier like Gaijin kind of is against doing somewhat. That's kind of a slippery slope that I'm not going to get into right now. But the J-10 on the other hand is 13.7, and because of that it does have the 2 additional active radar homing missiles, PL-12s. The JF-17 only has 4, but they are the same missile. The JF-17's is called the SD-10. The SD-10, as far as I know, is just an export name for the PL-12. Same little rundown as I did with the JF-17. The RWR feels fine. I don't know if the RWR and the radar are placeholders or not, to be honest with you. I don't know what the historically correct one is, and I don't know what it should be able to do. But as for what's on the dev server, the RWR and the radar feel fine. This one has HMD for the radar and for the IR missiles, so that is a great thing to have, especially at 13.7. That's becoming more and more standard. You really want to have HMD, especially when it comes to slinging off those Fox 3s and being able to go 90 degrees and notch the incoming missiles as quickly as possible. I would even argue that the J-10's radar is a little bit better than most because when you're using TWS mode, the 10 degrees of vertical scan covers more slice of sky than most of the radars do at top tier. Usually they'll do something like 5 to 8 degrees vertical when doing TWS scans. But with the J-10 you can cover more sky and have more vertical scan at the same time, so that's pretty impressive. Not a big deal, like it's not something that would be worth a BR increase or anything like that, but it is a nice quality of life feature to have. It's still rocking the Gish 23, which is, as I said with the Jeff, probably the worst of the top tier cannons. That being said, all of the top tier cannons are pretty good. Even stuff like the Gish 23 and the Defas will kill targets pretty reliably in one burst, if not just give them a second burst and they'll usually die. And the most difficult part about using these guns is obviously the velocity. With a little bit of practice, it's not that big of a deal, especially because you're not really getting into many gunfights anyways at this battle rate, and if you are, you're probably right in their face, so you're not going to be after leading too much. Having only 200 rounds of ammo is kind of a bummer though, especially if you're not too well practiced with this cannon. That 200 rounds is going to be pretty fast. Other than that, we can think of countermeasures, I guess, and for countermeasures on the J-10, when I was playing this plane on the dev server for this specific playthrough and this batch of footage, it only had like 18 max countermeasures, but that is because the additional countermeasures weren't yet modeled for whatever reason. If you hover over the stat card, it says that they're there, so I anticipated them being there. I'm not worried about it. And actually, I think at the time of recording, I have played a couple J10 games since, and I'm pretty sure that the countermeasure count is now up into the 60s or something along those lines. Don't quote me on that. I really didn't pay that much attention to it because it clearly wasn't finalized yet, but I'm not really worried about the countermeasure count for the J10. It is going to be on the lower end of top tier vehicles, but if memory serves, it is going to be over 60, and with the ability to split chaff and flare however much you want and deploy them separately, it's really not that big of an issue. You'd have to be pretty unlucky to be using all of your countermeasures in a single match. That being said, it does limit how you can play the plane. You can't be super aggressive when you don't have an infinite amount of chaff like you can with something like the F-15, where you can kind of just turn your brain off, spam AMRAAMs, and just notch every single thing that flies at you with no worries in the world because you'll never run out of chaff. That's not going to be the case with the J10. You have to be a little bit more reserved in that regard. Other than that, I'm really just kind of waiting to see how this new PL5 performs. It should be tracking suspension IRCCM if I am correct on that. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any clue what it should be like, because I'm really not well versed in this IRCCM PL5, though I am looking forward to it, and I'll let you guys know how it is. Other than that, I do like this plane. I will probably be playing it a good bit when the update comes out. It's unique, it's different, and it is a good addition to top tier. It's kind of a new flavor, but still competitive at the same time. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think about the J10 in the comments down below. Will you be grinding it? Will you just skip it? And I'll see you later.